In the bustling city streets, Adam, a young millionaire, was racing to an important meeting when an unexpected encounter changed his life forever. A soaked beggar, holding a tiny baby in her arms, caught his attention. Moved by compassion, Adam made a spontaneous decision to give her the keys to his home, offering her safety and shelter. What followed was a journey of kindness, loss, and love as Adam confronted his past and built new connections with Stella, a woman facing her struggles. This is a story of redemption, resilience, and the power of human connection that brings unexpected joy and healing to all involved. If you are not subscribed, I recommend you subscribe and activate the bell so you don't miss any videos. In the heart of a bustling city, a young millionaire named Adam found himself racing against time, rushing to an immensely significant meeting that could shape his future. The rain pelted down, drenching the streets in a cold, relentless downpour. As he hurried through the slick, rain-soaked sidewalks, his mind occupied with the gravity of his business, something unexpected caught his eye: a disheveled beggar, soaked to the bone, cradling a tiny, fragile baby in her arms. The sight pierced through the veil of his ambition, stirring a profound sense of empathy deep within him. Without a second thought, driven by an impulse he couldn't quite explain, Adam halted in his tracks. He approached the desperate woman, his heart heavy with a mixture of sorrow and urgency. Reaching into his pocket, he pulled out the keys to his opulent home, a place of warmth and shelter, and pressed them into her trembling hands. "Take these," he said softly, his voice almost drowned out by the pounding rain. "Go there. You'll be safe." It was a gesture of pure, unfiltered compassion, an act of kindness from a man who had everything to a woman who had nothing. Hours later, after the critical meeting had concluded, Adam returned to his grand residence, his mind now consumed with thoughts of the woman and the child he had entrusted to his care. He entered his home with haste, not bothering to announce his arrival, his heart pounding with a mix of anticipation and unease. But as he stepped inside, his eyes were met with a sight that sent a shiver down his spine, a scene so shocking and distressing that it gripped his soul with an icy hand of horror. Meanwhile, in Boston's architectural circles, Adam was a name that resonated with admiration and respect. He was not just a participant, but a standout figure at the city's most illustrious architecture event, a gathering cloaked in glamour and sophistication, yet rooted in a noble cause. The evening's true purpose was to gather funds for affordable housing, a cause dear to many but especially to Adam, who had recently endured profound personal loss. His young wife's tragic death had left a void in his heart, and the weight of caring for his ailing father had turned him inward, making him appear distant to those who didn't know his story. At the event, Adam crossed paths with Lillian, a titan in the world of architecture, revered for her wisdom and countless accomplishments. She greeted him warmly, her eyes reflecting genuine concern. "Adam, it's always a pleasure to see you at these events," she remarked, her voice carrying a blend of admiration and curiosity. "I've heard about the challenges you faced recently, especially with your father's health. It's truly admirable how you're managing everything." Adam offered her a polite smile, a facade masking the turmoil within. He had always felt like an outsider in such settings, where appearances often mattered more than substance. Picking up on his unease, Lillian gently probed, "These gatherings can feel shallow, I know, but sometimes they reveal unexpected truths. What brings you here tonight, Adam? I sense it's more than just networking." He sighed, his gaze distant, clouded with memories. "I'm here out of duty more than anything else," he confessed, his voice tinged with melancholy. "Architecture has been a part of my life, but it's not all that defines me. My life's foundation was built on the lessons my father instilled in me, lessons forged through struggle and sacrifice." His voice softened as he recalled those difficult days. "My father wasn't a man of great means, but his heart was vast. He faced hardships that would break many, yet he always found ways to lift others. He raised me single-handedly, and every hardship he endured was a lesson in resilience and generosity. Those are the things that shaped who I am today, far more than any building or design I could create. As Adam stood there, the memories of his father's quiet strength and the haunting sight in his own home intertwined, leaving him grappling with a new, unsettling reality. The luxurious world he had built seemed to pale in comparison to the raw, unadorned truths that life had forced him to confront that day. Lillian's eyes softened as she absorbed Adam's words, her face reflecting admiration and a deep sense of respect. It's not often you meet someone who holds on to those values so tightly, especially in a world where success can often strip people of their grounding. Your father must be an extraordinary man. Adam's expression brightened with pride, a warm glimmer shining in his eyes as he thought of his father. He truly is. He's done a little bit of everything over the years, fixing things for neighbors, offering private tutoring sessions, anything to keep us afloat. But what always stood out was his belief that a man's greatest wealth isn't measured by what he owns, but by what he can give to others. Lillian nodded thoughtfully, sensing the profound truth in Adam's words. That makes so much sense, Adam. It's clear to me now why you live and work the way you do. You carry that belief with you, and it's reflected in everything you build, both in your career and in your relationships. I think many of the people we encountered tonight could benefit from that wisdom. Adam's smile was sincere, a mix of gratitude and humility. I just try to live in a way that would make my father proud. He always told me that the real architecture of life isn't in constructing physical spaces, but in building bridges between people, creating places of connection, understanding, and support. Lillian smiled back, her admiration for Adam deepening. She too had come from humble beginnings, working tirelessly to reach the pinnacle of her profession. Yet, despite her many accomplishments, there was a quiet sadness in her eyes, a hint of a life that hadn't fully unfolded in the way she had once dreamed. Family and love, those were things she had quietly set aside as she pursued her career, and that part of her life remained shrouded in privacy. As the evening came to a close, Adam left the event with a sense of purpose mingled with a subtle weight in his heart. Driving home, he reflected on the evening's conversations and the ever-present influence of his father's teachings. His home, a blend of modern elegance and comforting warmth, had become more than just a residence. It was a sanctuary, a place where he could escape the chaos of the world outside. When he arrived, the familiar sight of his father greeted him. Mr. Robert was seated comfortably in the living room, watching one of his favorite late-night shows. Despite the illness that had slowed his body, his mind remained sharp, and his spirit vibrant, qualities that Adam deeply admired and drew strength from. "How was the event?" son Mr. Robert asked, his eyes twinkling with genuine interest. "Did they manage to raise enough money?" "It went well," Dad Adam replied, dropping his keys on the counter and settling into the chair beside his father. "The event had its fair share of pretentiousness, with people who think their wealth makes them invincible. But despite that, it was successful. I even had a good talk with Lillian about how our work can truly impact society." Mr. Robert nodded approvingly. "I'm glad to hear that. It's important to work, Adam. You're doing more than just designing buildings, you're shaping lives, just like I always hoped you would." A smile tugged at the corners of Adam's mouth as he stood up and made his way to the kitchen. "How about I fix us something to eat? Anything in particular you're craving tonight?" "Whatever you make will be fine," his father called out with a warm chuckle. "Don't go through too much trouble just for me." Adam paused for a moment, his heart swelling with affection as he glanced over his shoulder at the man who had shaped his life so profoundly. "It's no trouble at all, Dad. You've always taken care of me. Now, it's my turn to take care of you." Later that evening, as Adam gently helped his father settle into bed, their nightly routine took on a comforting familiarity. Adam couldn't help but share his plans for the following morning. "Dad, I have to travel early tomorrow for that big meeting about the new project. Don't worry, though I'll make sure everything is organized here, and Mrs. Martinez promised she'd come by to check on you." Mr. Robert, his eyes soft with affection and pride, smiled warmly at his son. "You've always been such a good son, Adam. Go ahead and take care of what you need to. I'm proud of you, more than you know." The weight of those words hung in the air, carrying a depth of meaning that stretched back through years of hardship. Mr. Robert had endured more than his share of struggles. After Adam's mother left them when he was just a boy, Mr. Robert shouldered the heavy burden of raising his son alone. Financial challenges seemed endless, but he never wavered in his belief that education was Adam's path to a better future. Every dollar he earned, no matter how hard fought, went toward ensuring Adam received the best education possible. And Adam had risen to every challenge, transforming that investment into a remarkable career as a celebrated architect. Despite his professional triumphs, Adam never lost sight of the sacrifices his father had made. He stayed by his father's side, repaying that lifelong devotion with unwavering love and care. The next morning, Adam awoke early, ready to face a critical day. He dressed with precision, selecting a sleek, tailored suit that conveyed confidence and professionalism. Today's meeting in a neighboring city was crucial, and everything had to be perfect. As he prepared to leave, Adam picked up his phone and made a quick call. "Good morning, Mr. Connor. I'm just heading out now and should be there shortly," he said, confirming the meeting as he grabbed his briefcase and headed toward the front door. Stepping outside, Adam was met with the ominous sight of a torrential downpour. The rain hammered against the pavement, turning the streets into rivers of water. His driver, already waiting by the car, nodded in acknowledgement as Adam approached. "It looks like we're in for some rough weather on the way," Mr. Adam, the driver, remarked, glancing at the sky. The rain was relentless, and the traffic in the neighboring city was sure to be a mess. As the car inched along through the congested streets, Adam stared out the rain-streaked window, his mind racing with thoughts about the meeting. Suddenly, something on the roadside made his breath catch. Through the sheets of rain, he saw a woman homeless, drenched, and clutching a newborn baby desperately to her chest. The sight was gut-wrenching, a raw image of human vulnerability that pierced through Adam's thoughts of business and success. In an instant, his priorities shifted. "Stop the car," Adam said firmly, his voice cutting through the sound of the rain. The driver, familiar with Adam's compassionate nature, hesitated. "Mr. Adam, with all due respect, you'll ruin your suit, and we're already behind schedule for the meeting." Adam's voice was resolute, his gaze locked on the woman. "I don't care about the suit or being late. That woman and her baby need help right now." Without another word, Adam opened the car door and stepped out into the pouring rain, the cold water soaking through his clothes almost instantly. He approached the woman with determined steps, his heart pounding not from the rain but from the urgency of the situation. As he drew closer, the woman looked up at him with wide, frightened eyes, her entire body trembling from the cold and exhaustion. "Can I help you?" Adam asked gently, his voice full of concern. "You can't stay out here with your baby in this weather. Do you have anywhere to go? Any place you can call home?" The woman shook her head, her eyes brimming with tears. Adam could feel the weight of her despair, and in that moment he knew there was only one thing he could do. The woman, still shocked by the unexpected kindness, instinctively shielded her baby from the relentless rain. Her voice, strained by exhaustion and uncertainty, replied, "No, we have nowhere to go." She didn't offer any further details, but the desperation in her eyes said everything Adam needed to know. Feeling the pressing need to act, Adam sprinted back to the car, the rain pounding against him like icy needles. As he reached the vehicle, he urgently instructed the driver to open the glove compartment. Inside was a familiar bunch of keys, which Adam quickly grabbed. With determination, he rushed back to the woman, his heart pounding with both urgency and empathy. When he reached her again, he took a moment to catch his breath and introduced himself. "My name is Adam," he said softly, trying not to alarm her. "What's your name?" "Stella," she answered, holding her daughter even tighter, her protective instincts fully engaged as she tried to shield the tiny child from the cold rain. "Stella, listen," Adam began, his voice calm but firm. "This is the key to my father's house. It's close by, and it's empty right now because he's staying with me. You and your daughter can stay there." He held out the bunch of keys to her, his hand steady despite the cold. "I have to go. I'm late for a meeting, but my driver will take you there and make sure you have everything you need." Without waiting for her response, Adam handed the keys over, his fingers already numb from the rain. He then turned and hurried back to the car, now thoroughly drenched but driven by the urgency of both his business commitment and his desire to help. Sliding back into the seat, he quickly gave instructions to his driver. "I'll walk to the meeting from here. Please take Stella and her baby to my father's house. It's just down the road. On the way, stop at the market and buy whatever they need: food, clothes, diapers, anything." The driver, well versed in Adam's habit of spontaneous acts of generosity, simply nodded. "Of course, Mr. Adam. I'll handle everything." With a final nod, Adam stepped out of the car once more, bracing himself for the walk in the pouring rain. As he watched the car pull away, he felt a strange sense of peace settle over him, knowing that at least for now, Stella and her child had a safe place to go. The driver, now left with the responsibility of carrying out Adam's wishes, approached Stella with a gentle, reassuring smile. "Come on, don't worry," he said kindly, trying to put her at ease. "I'll take you to a safe place. Mr. Adam only wants to help you and your daughter." But Stella's expression remained wary, her fear and mistrust evident in her eyes. She clutched her daughter closer, her voice trembling as she spoke. "I don't know you. I've seen what happens to people who trust strangers. How can I be sure this isn't a trick?" The driver, understanding her apprehension, softened his tone and took a step back, trying to show that he meant no harm. "I completely understand your fear," he said gently. "But I promise you, Mr. Adam is a good man. He's helped many people, and he only wants to help you too." To offer a bit of reassurance, he reached into his pocket and pulled out his wallet, flipping it open to reveal pictures of his own family. "Look, I'm a father too. I have 2 children, and I've been working with Mr. Adam for years. He's the kind of man who cares about people, especially those in need." Stella's eyes flickered over the photos, and she studied the driver's face with cautious curiosity. His sincerity seemed genuine, and though her instincts told her to be careful, the promise of shelter and safety for her and her baby was too much to ignore. Finally, after a long pause, she nodded. "Okay," she whispered, her voice filled with both hope and uncertainty. "We'll go with you." With careful steps, Stella climbed into the car, still holding her daughter close to protect her from the rain. The driver, true to his word, made sure they were comfortable before starting the engine. Their first stop was the market, where he purchased essentials: food, baby formula, diapers, and some warm clothes for both mother and child. Stella watched quietly, her mistrust slowly melting into cautious gratitude as she began to realize that maybe, just maybe, this was the chance she had been praying for. In the fading light of the late afternoon, Adam stepped out of the building after an intense and fruitful meeting, his mind already drifting to thoughts of Stella and her child. As soon as he climbed into the waiting car, he turned to his driver, his voice filled with concern. "How did it go with Stella and the child? Did they get to my father's house safely?" The driver nodded, but there was a hint of hesitation in his response. "Yes, Mr. Adam, they arrived safely, but I left them at the beginning of the street. I thought it might be easier to maneuver the car with all the rain and narrow lanes." Adam's brow furrowed slightly, his tone firm but not harsh. You should have taken them right to the front door, especially with the weather and the baby. They needed the extra care." He paused, a sigh escaping as he reflected on the day. "But it's all right. It's been a busy day for all of us. I'll go by tomorrow to check on them and make sure they have everything they need." As the car moved through the city, Adam stared out the window, his thoughts consumed with worry for Stella and her daughter. His heart told him he'd done the right thing by helping them, but a nagging sense of responsibility lingered. Would they truly be safe? Had he done enough? When Adam finally arrived home, the familiar comfort of the place did little to ease his concerns. As soon as he stepped through the door, he was met by Mrs. Rose, the kind-hearted woman who cared for his father whenever Adam had to be away. Her expression held something unexpected, and Adam could sense that she had news to share. "Mr. Adam," she began, her voice cautious. "Your father, Mr. Robert, took a copy of the keys to his old house this morning. He left right after you did. He said he wanted to spend a few days there because he was feeling a bit better and bored of being here." Adam's eyes widened with surprise and worry. "He went alone?" he asked, the concern evident in his voice. "But he knows he shouldn't be going anywhere on his own, especially not in his condition." Mrs. Rose nodded, understanding his alarm. "Yes, he went alone. He waited until you left, because he knew you wouldn't let him go like that. He seemed determined and said he felt well enough to stay at the house for a while." Adam felt his chest tighten with unease. The thought of his father being at the other house, the same one where Stella and her daughter were now sheltering, filled him with concern. His father's health was fragile. How could he have taken such a risk? And what could this mean for Stella and her baby? His mind raced with possibilities, and without a moment's hesitation, Adam turned to his driver. "Take me there now. I need to make sure everything's all right." The urgency in his voice left no room for delay. The driver immediately started the car, and they sped through the streets, the rain still drumming relentlessly against the windshield. As they drew closer to the house, Adam's anxiety only grew. What if something had happened? What if his father's decision to go there had complicated things? When they finally arrived at the house, Adam's worst fears seemed to be realized. The front door was wide open, and an ambulance was parked outside, its lights flashing ominously in the rain-soaked evening. His heart pounded in his chest as he leaped from the car, sprinting toward the scene unfolding before him. His breath caught in his throat when he saw his father being wheeled out on a stretcher by paramedics, his face pale and his body still. Panic surged through Adam as he rushed inside, trying to make sense of what was happening. He reached the paramedics, his voice frantic. "I'm his son. What happened? Please, tell me what's going on." One of the paramedics, a young woman with a calm demeanor, despite the chaos, turned to him with a reassuring but serious tone. "Your father experienced some complications, but we're stabilizing him now. He's conscious and responsive, but we need to get him to the hospital for further evaluation." Adam's heart pounded in his chest as he looked toward the stretcher, his father's frail figure lying there. He could hardly believe what was happening. Complications? What kind of complications? How serious is it? The paramedic, sensing his distress, offered a gentler response. "He's stable for now, but it seems he overexerted himself. We'll know more once we get him to the hospital. He's a strong man, but he needs to rest." As they prepared to load his father into the ambulance, Adam caught sight of Stella standing in the doorway, holding her daughter. Her eyes were wide with concern and fear, clearly shaken by the sudden medical emergency. Their gazes met for a moment, and Adam felt a surge of responsibility for everything that had unfolded. After making sure his father was safely in the ambulance, Adam approached Stella. His voice was softer now, trying to reassure her. "I'm sorry for all of this. My father wasn't supposed to be here. I didn't expect this to happen." Stella, still clutching her daughter, nodded slowly, her voice trembling. "I didn't know what to do. He seemed fine at first, but then he collapsed. "I'm so sorry." Adam shook his head gently. "No, you did the right thing by calling for help. Don't worry about it. Right now I need to be with my father, but I'll make sure you and your daughter are okay too." With that, Adam turned back to the ambulance, climbing inside to stay with his father as they rushed to the hospital, his mind torn between the weight of his father's condition and the responsibility he felt for Stella and her child. The doctor's calm yet serious demeanor did little to ease the tension in Adam's chest. "Your father suffered a stroke," the doctor explained gently. "Fortunately, your wife was here and acted quickly, calling the ambulance. She saved his life." Adam's mind whirled with a tempest of emotions: relief that his father was alive, gratitude that Stella had been there at the crucial moment, and the lingering fear of what could have happened had she not acted so swiftly. His heart pounded as he followed the stretcher to the waiting ambulance, his hands trembling with the weight of it all. Even though his father was now in capable hands, the scare had shaken him to his core. As the ambulance doors closed and the vehicle sped toward the hospital, Adam felt a pull to return to the house. His father would need him, but so did Stella and her daughter, two souls who had found themselves intertwined with his life in the most unexpected way. With hurried steps, Adam made his way back to the house, his mind still reeling from the near tragedy. He spotted Stella standing by the doorway, her daughter clutched tightly in her arms. Her face was a mix of concern and weariness, the weight of the day evident in her eyes. Adam approached her, trying to steady his voice, despite the remnants of panic still gripping him. "Stella," he began, his words laced with gratitude and lingering anxiety. I don't even know how to thank you for what you've done. The doctor thought you were my wife," he added with a small, strained smile, attempting to inject a bit of lightness into the heavy atmosphere. Stella's expression softened, her tone humble and sincere. "There's no need to thank me, Mr. Adam. I just did what anyone would do. I happened to be in the right place at the right time." Adam's gaze drifted to the bags beside her, filled with only the most necessities. He noticed how modest her purchases were, and concern flickered in his eyes. "I see you've only bought the essentials," he observed. "Please, you could have taken more. You don't need to hold back. You and your daughter deserve everything you need." Stella looked at him with a mixture of gratitude and hesitation. Her voice was quiet but firm as she responded, "I didn't want to take advantage of your kindness. You've already done so much for us. I'm just grateful for what you've given." A silence settled between them, but it wasn't uncomfortable. In that moment, Adam felt an inexplicable connection to Stella, a sense of understanding that went beyond words. He could see the resilience in her eyes, the quiet strength that had carried her through whatever hardship she had endured. "Stella," Adam said softly, his voice full of genuine concern, "I'd like to know more about you and your daughter. How did you end up in this situation? If you're willing to share, I'd like to listen. Maybe I can help in more ways than just providing shelter." Stella hesitated for a moment, her eyes flicking down to her daughter's peaceful face before meeting Adam's gaze. She sighed, the weight of her story evident in the breath she released. Slowly, she began to speak, her voice steady but tinged with the pain of memories. "I never knew my mother," she started, her words carrying a quiet strength. "I grew up with a father who was more like a stranger to me. He drank too much, and most days it was like I didn't even exist to him." Adam's heart ached as he listened, his attention fully focused on Stella's story. There was a rawness in her voice that spoke of years of unspoken suffering, but also of resilience. "I always wanted to study," Stella continued, her eyes distant as she recounted her past. "But my father, he never allowed it. He thought it was a waste of time, especially for a girl. So I read in secret after he'd passed out from drinking, imagining a better future for myself." Her words struck a chord deep within Adam. He could sense the quiet determination that had driven her through those difficult years. "You had dreams," Adam said softly. acknowledging the hope that had sustained her. Dreams that no one should have taken from you. Stella nodded, her gaze shifting to her daughter. I did, and when I had my little girl, I promised myself that she would never grow up in the kind of world I did. But life, it's been hard. We ended up on the streets after I lost my job, and since then, every day has been a fight just to survive. Adam's heart clenched with empathy. He could see the fierce love in Stella's eyes as she looked at her daughter, and he felt a surge of determination to do whatever he could to help them. You don't have to fight alone anymore, Stella, he said gently, his voice full of resolve. I'll do everything I can to make sure you and your daughter are safe, and that you have the chance to rebuild your lives. For the first time since their conversation began, Stella's eyes welled with tears not of sadness, but of relief. She had carried so much weight for so long, and now there was someone offering to help her carry it. Stella paused for a moment, her eyes distant as she relived those painful memories. Time passed and things only seemed to get worse. My father, already a heavy drinker, sank deeper into his addiction. I tried to help him, to pull him out of that dark place, but nothing worked. He was a harsh man, more frightening than comforting, and I was always on edge around him. Then, one day I met someone, she continued, her voice softening as she recalled the brief glimmer of hope in her life. He seemed perfect, kind, caring, everything I thought I needed. For a while, I believed I had finally found someone to build a life with. Stella's sigh was heavy with sorrow as she continued. But when I found out I was pregnant, everything changed. I was scared, but I thought this was it. This was my chance to have a family. I imagined a future where we'd raise our child together. But as soon as I told him, he disappeared, just vanished without a trace. I never heard from him again. Her voice trembled as she recounted the betrayal and the loneliness that followed. I managed to hide the pregnancy for a while, but when my father found out. She hesitated, the memories still raw. He was furious. He didn't even give me a chance to explain. He just threw me out of the house with nothing but the clothes on my back. Adam's heart sank as he listened to her story, the weight of her struggles pressing down on him. How did you survive, he asked, his voice thick with concern. Stella's voice quivered as she answered. I begged for money and slept on the streets. When my daughter was born, it was the homeless community that helped me. They shared what little they had. I was terrified and wary of everyone and everything, but I had to be strong for my daughter. She was all I had left. Adam looked at Stella, his eyes full of empathy. He saw not just the hardship she had endured, but the incredible resilience that had carried her through it all. Stella, he said softly, you are so strong. Your story, it's one of immense struggle, but also of immense courage. Stella offered him a sad smile, the weight of her experiences evident in her expression. I didn't have a choice. Life wasn't kind to me, but I couldn't give up. For my daughter, I would face it all again, no matter how hard it got. Tears welled up in her eyes as she continued, her voice choked with emotion. I don't even know how to thank you, Mr. Adam. When I saw all those books at your father's house, it felt like I'd stepped into a different world, like I was in heaven. I've always loved to read, but I never had the chance. I've never seen so many books in one place. Adam's smile was gentle, his heart warmed by her gratitude. You're welcome to read as many as you want, Stella. Consider them yours too. As the conversation came to a natural pause, Adam reached into his pocket and pulled out an envelope. With a soft voice and a kind expression, he handed it to her. Here's something to help with expenses, he said, his tone gentle yet firm. Stella hesitated for a moment, overwhelmed by the gesture. She looked at the envelope, then back at Adam, her voice barely above a whisper. Thank you so much. You've done more for us than I could ever have imagined. Adam simply nodded, understanding the depth of her gratitude without needing any more words. As he turned to leave, he glanced back at Stella and her daughter, a quiet determination settling in his chest. He knew that this was only the beginning of their story, and he intended to see it through to help them rebuild their lives, just as his father had helped him build his own. Stella stared at the envelope in her hands, her fingers trembling as she cautiously peeled it open. When she saw the amount of money inside, her eyes widened in disbelief. "Adam, this is too much. I can't accept all of this." She stammered, her voice barely steady as she tried to grasp the magnitude of the gesture. But Adam's expression remained warm and encouraging, his smile unwavering. "Please, Stella," he urged gently. "You need this more than I do. This is for you and your daughter. Use it to buy clothes, food, everything you need to start building a stable life again." Tears welled up in Stella's eyes, her emotions swirling between gratitude and overwhelm. "I don't even know how to thank you," she whispered, her voice choked with emotion. "You're not just giving me help, you're giving me hope. I haven't felt that in a long time." For a moment they stood in silence, the weight of the shared moment pressing between them. Stella observed Adam more closely, and a question began to form in her mind, something that had been lingering since she first met him. Finally, she found the courage to ask, her voice soft but curious. "May I ask, are you married, Adam?" Adam sighed deeply, his expression shifting as a shadow passed over his face. "I was," he began, his voice tinged with a sadness that seemed to have settled deep in his bones. "My wife. She died in an accident just a month after our wedding. That was 3 years ago." Stella's hand flew to her mouth, her heart aching at the revelation. "I'm so sorry, Adam. I had no idea." He shook his head gently, a mixture of acceptance and lingering pain in his eyes. "It's okay. It was hard still is, but I've learned to live with it. The pain never really goes away, but we find ways to move on, don't we? We have to." Stella nodded slowly, feeling an unexpected connection with Adam. At that moment, she realized they were both carrying the weight of loss, both trying to navigate through a world that had taken so much from them. The bond between them, though unspoken, was palpable, born from shared suffering and resilience. Adam stood up, picked up his keys, and offered Stella a reassuring look. "Well, I need to go now, but please make yourself at home here. And if you need anything at all, don't hesitate to give me a call." "Thank you, Adam," Stella said sincerely, her voice full of gratitude. "For everything." He nodded, a faint but sad smile on his lips. "Take care, Stella, and remember you're not alone." With those final words, Adam turned and left, leaving Stella sitting in the quiet house, enveloped in a mix of gratitude, hope, and a newfound sense of connection. For the first time in a long while, she didn't feel so isolated in the world. Adam returned to his own home that night, his mind swirling with thoughts of Stella, her daughter, and the unexpected turn their lives had taken. He couldn't shake the feeling that he had crossed paths with her for a reason, and it lingered with him as he prepared for the next day. The following morning, Adam made his way to the hospital to visit his father. Mr. Robert was stable, but the doctors had stressed the need for ongoing care and close monitoring. As Adam sat beside his father's bed, he began to recount the events of the past few days, telling him about Stella and her daughter, about how she had been there at the right moment to save his life. He spoke of her strength and the hardships she had faced, marveling at how much she had endured. Mr. Robert listened intently, his face showing a deep emotional response to his son's words. When Adam finished, his father's voice was weak but filled with pride. "You did a very good thing, son, Mr. Robert said, his eyes shining with a mixture of gratitude and admiration. "Stella sounds like an incredible woman, strong and courageous, despite everything life has thrown at her." Adam nodded, a sense of peace settling over him as he met his father's gaze. "She is, Dad, and I just want to help her the way you helped me. You taught me everything about compassion, about looking out for others. I guess that's why I felt so compelled to step in when I saw her and her daughter." Mr. Robert smiled softly, his hand weakly reaching for Adam's. "It's good to see that you've grown into a man with a kind heart. I thank God every day for giving me the strength to raise you on my own. You've made me proud, Adam, and I know your mother would be proud too." Tears welled in Adam's eyes, his father's words filling him with a deep sense of fulfillment. As he sat there beside the man who had shaped his life, Adam realized that everything he had learned about love, about sacrifice, about resilience was now guiding him to help someone else. And in that moment, he knew he was exactly where he needed to be. There was a brief pause as Stella absorbed Adam's words, her expression a mix of surprise and uncertainty. She looked at him, trying to process the weight of his offer. "Live in your house? You're serious about this?" she asked softly, her voice tinged with disbelief. It was an unexpected turn of events, one that felt almost too good to be true. Adam nodded, his gaze steady and sincere. "Yes, I'm serious. My father and I have been talking about it, and we both feel that it would be wonderful to have you and your daughter closer to us. The house is big, and lately it's felt empty. Having you there would bring life back into it. My dad would love the company. And you wouldn't have to worry about anything. You could focus on building a better life for yourself and your daughter." Stella looked down at her baby, who was playing quietly on the floor, oblivious to the conversation that could potentially change their lives. Her heart swelled with emotion, a mixture of gratitude, fear, and hope. "I don't know what to say," she whispered, tears welling up in her eyes. "You've already done so much for us, Adam. I don't want to be a burden to you or your father." Adam leaned forward, his voice gentle yet firm. "You're not a burden, Stella. You're a strong woman who's been through more than most people could ever imagine. You deserve a safe place to rebuild your life. And my father and I want to help you do that. We want you and your daughter to have a home where you feel secure and cared for. And honestly, I think having you both there would make our lives better too." Stella's eyes shimmered with tears as she considered the offer. It was more than just a place to stay, it was the chance for a fresh start, a way to rebuild the life she had lost. The idea of living in a stable, safe environment where she could focus on her daughter and her future felt like a dream. But still, there was hesitation in her heart. "Are you sure this is what you want?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "I don't want to intrude on your life." Adam smiled, his eyes full of warmth and reassurance. "Stella, you and your daughter would never be an intrusion. My father and I are offering this because we want to help and because we believe that this could be a new beginning for all of us. Please say yes. Let us do this for you." Stella took a deep breath, her hands trembling as she reached for her daughter and held her close. She looked up at Adam, her heart full of gratitude and hope. "Okay," she said softly, her voice trembling with emotion. "We'll stay." "Thank you, Adam. Thank you for giving us a chance at a new life." Adam's smile broadened, relief and happiness flooding through him. "Thank you, Stella. You've made the right choice." He stood up, feeling a renewed sense of purpose. "I'll start making the arrangements, and we'll get everything ready for you to move in as soon as possible." Stella nodded, her heart lighter than it had been in years. For the first time in a long time, she felt like she and her daughter had a future to look forward to, a future filled with hope, security, and the possibility of happiness. As Adam left the house that evening, he felt a sense of fulfillment that had been missing from his life for so long. His father's idea had opened the door to something new, something that felt right. As he drove home, he couldn't help but smile, thinking about the life that was about to blossom in the place that had once felt so empty. And in the days to come, as Stella and her daughter settled into their new home, Adam would find that their presence brought a warmth and light that had been missing for too long. His father, once lonely and weary, now found joy in the laughter of a child and the companionship of someone who shared his love for books. And for Stella, it was the beginning of a new chapter, a chapter filled with hope, healing, and the promise of a brighter tomorrow. Stella stood in the kitchen, enjoying the warm, inviting space that now felt like a true home. She had grown increasingly comfortable in Adam's house over the past few weeks, and the relationship between her, Adam, and Mr. Robert had blossomed into something that felt like family. As she prepared tea, Adam entered the room, his expression thoughtful. He leaned against the counter for a moment, watching her with a quiet smile before finally speaking up. "Stella, I've been thinking," Adam began, his voice gentle yet purposeful. "You've done so much for my father and me already. You've become a part of our lives, and we're so grateful for that. But I want to make sure you have everything you need, not just a roof over your head, but the chance to stand on your own 2 feet too." Stella turned to him, curious and a little unsure of where the conversation was going. "Adam, I'm grateful for everything you've done. Living here has already given me and my daughter a fresh start. I don't want to ask for more." Adam shook his head with a reassuring smile. "This isn't about asking for more, Stella. It's about giving you the tools to rebuild your life with independence and security. I want to help you get back on your feet financially. Have you thought about what you'd like to do in the long term?" Stella looked down at the steaming cup of tea in her hands, her thoughts swirling. "I've always dreamed of studying more, maybe going to school or getting some kind of training. But I've never had the chance, until now. Being here has given me hope that maybe I can make something of myself, not just for my daughter, but for me too." Adam nodded, encouraged by her determination. "That's exactly what I want for you, Stella. I want to support you in pursuing those dreams. If it's school or training, whatever it is, I'll help you with the costs. You deserve the opportunity to build a future you can be proud of." Tears of gratitude welled up in Stella's eyes, and she blinked them away as she tried to find the right words. "Adam, I don't even know how to thank you. You've already done so much. To have the chance to go to school, to learn, it's more than I ever thought possible." Adam reached out, placing a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "You've earned this, Stella. It's time for you to focus on yourself, on your future. You've already shown incredible strength, and now it's time to turn that strength into something lasting. I'm here to help you every step of the way." Stella smiled through her tears, feeling a warmth in her heart she hadn't felt in a long time. "Thank you, Adam. I'm ready to start this new chapter, and I promise I won't let this opportunity go to waste." As the days passed, Stella began exploring her options for school and training, with Adam's support and encouragement. Their bond grew stronger, and the once strange house became a home full of life and warmth. Mr. Robert thrived with Stella and her daughter around, his days filled with conversation, laughter, and a shared love of books. Stella had found not just a new beginning, but a family, something she had longed for but never imagined she would have again. And in return, she brought light into Adam and Mr. Robert's lives, reminding them of the power of compassion, resilience, and the simple joys of living together as a family. Stella stood quietly for a moment, absorbing Adam's words as if they were a lifeline pulling her from the depths of her past struggles. Her heart swelled with emotions she hadn't allowed herself to feel in years: hope, gratitude, and a cautious sense of possibility. She had been surviving for so long, but now, with Adam's support, the idea of actually living, of taking control of her own destiny, was starting to feel real. "Adam, you've already given me so much," she said, her voice trembling with the weight of her emotions. "The idea of having my income, of being independent again, it feels like a dream. I can't even remember the last time I decided for myself without fear or hesitation. For so long, I've been trapped in this mindset that I wasn't capable, that my life was meant to be dictated by others. Your offer is more than just money, it's the first step toward reclaiming my life." Adam listened intently, his eyes full of understanding and compassion. He could see how much this moment meant to her, how deeply the years of oppression had affected her self-worth. "Stella, you're stronger than you know," he said softly. You've survived so much, and now it's time for you to thrive. I want you to feel empowered, to know that you can shape your future. This is your chance to take those first steps toward freedom." Stella took a deep breath, her mind swirling with thoughts of what her life could be, of what she wanted it to be. She had spent so long afraid of making mistakes, of stepping out of line, that she had forgotten what it felt like to truly live. But now, with Adam's encouragement, she could feel a spark of confidence beginning to ignite within her. "You're right," she said, her voice stronger now. "I've been afraid for so long, afraid of making the wrong choices, afraid of failure. But I can't let that fear control me anymore. I want to start making decisions for myself, for my daughter. I want to show her that it's possible to be strong, to be independent, even when the world tries to hold you down." Adam nodded, his expression filled with pride and encouragement. "And you will, Stella. You've already proven how resilient you are. Now it's time to build on that resilience and create the life you deserve. I'll be here to support you every step of the way, but this journey is yours to lead." Stella smiled, a small but genuine smile that hinted at the hope growing inside her. "Thank you, Adam," she said, her voice full of sincerity. "Thank you for believing in me when I couldn't believe in myself. I won't let you down." "You won't let yourself down," Adam corrected gently. "This is about you, Stella. Take this opportunity and make it your own. You deserve every bit of happiness and success that comes your way." As the conversation drew to a close, Stella felt a newfound sense of determination. She was ready to take the steps toward independence, ready to start making decisions that were truly her own. For the first time in a long time, the future didn't seem so daunting, it seemed full of possibilities. And with that realization, Stella knew that her journey toward freedom had already begun. Stella's determination shone in her eyes as she nodded at Adam's suggestion. "I want that. I want my daughter to see me as a strong, independent woman, someone who makes her own decisions without fear. I want her to know she can choose her path in life, and that she doesn't have to rely on anyone but herself. Thank you, Adam, for believing in me." Adam smiled, pleased to see her resolve growing. "Then let's get started. We can set some initial goals together, small steps toward your independence. How about opening your bank account, or choosing something you've always wanted to buy for yourself and your daughter? Every choice will be a step forward on your journey." From that moment on, Stella began to receive a regular salary from Adam. It wasn't just money, it was freedom. For the first time in years, she experienced the empowering feeling of financial autonomy. She could buy new clothes for her daughter, pick out books to feed her growing love for reading, and even save money for the future, all without the shadow of dependency looming over her. As the weeks passed, the bond between Adam and Stella deepened. They spent more time together, often accompanied by little Hannah, who had become the light of their shared moments. Adam adored Hannah, and the three of them would often go on walks, exploring the beauty of nature around them. During these peaceful outings, Adam would talk passionately about architecture, sharing stories of his projects and inspirations. Stella soaked up every word, her admiration for him growing with each conversation. Stella also dedicated herself to reading the books Adam recommended. The more she read, the closer they became. Their affection for each other began to blossom into something deeper, something more profound than either of them had expected. Stella felt her heart stir with emotions she hadn't allowed herself to feel in so long. She realized she was falling in love with Adam, but she kept her feelings hidden, unsure of how to navigate this new territory. She didn't want to jeopardize the wonderful life she had started to build for herself and her daughter. One evening, Adam found himself sitting on the porch with his father, watching the sunset as they often did. The peaceful moment seemed like the perfect opportunity to confide in him. "Dad," Adam began, his voice soft and contemplative, "I think I'm falling in love with Stella. It's the first time in years I felt this way about anyone, but I don't know what to do." Mr. Robert looked at his son with a gentle, understanding smile. Son, life is too short for hesitations. If you feel this way about Stella, you need to tell her. You deserve to be happy, and from what I've seen, she seems to bring that out in you. Adam sighed, the weight of his father's words sinking in. Do you really think so? What if she doesn't feel the same way? What if I'm just misreading things? Mr. Robert chuckled softly, his eyes twinkling with wisdom. You'll never know unless you try. But son, I've seen the way she looks at you. There's something in her eyes when she's around you, something that tells me her feelings might be closer to yours than you think. Adam leaned back in his chair, the warmth of his father's encouragement filling him with a sense of clarity. Maybe you're right. Maybe it's time I stop holding back and let her know how I feel. With that, Adam made a silent vow to himself. He would take the risk, open his heart to Stella, and let the future unfold as it was meant to. Life was too short for regrets, and Adam knew that whatever happened next, it was a step worth taking. The next day, as the sun set once again, Adam resolved to talk to Stella. His heart raced with a mix of nerves and anticipation as he approached her, ready to open up and see where their journey might lead them both. Mrs. Lillian, a sophisticated and well-connected woman in Adam's social circle, approached Adam and Stella with her usual poised grace, a polite smile lighting up her face. Dressed impeccably in a designer gown, she exuded the effortless charm that came with years of navigating the world of high society. She extended a hand to Adam and then to Stella, her eyes sparkling with curiosity. Adam, it's always a pleasure to see you, she said warmly, then turned to Stella with an appraising look. And this must be the lovely Stella I've been hearing so much about. Adam smiled, his hand resting lightly on the small of Stella's back in a gesture of reassurance. Yes, Lillian, this is Stella. Stella, this is Mrs. Lillian, a longtime friend of the family, and an influential figure in the architecture world. Stella smiled politely, though she could sense the subtle scrutiny in Lillian's gaze. It's nice to meet you, Mrs. Lillian, she said, her voice steady, despite the nerves fluttering in her stomach. Lillian nodded, her eyes lingering on Stella with a mixture of curiosity and something else that Stella couldn't quite place. I must say, I've been quite intrigued by the stories I've heard about you. It's not every day someone from different circumstances becomes a part of our social circle. Her tone was polite, but there was a subtle edge to her words that wasn't lost on Stella. Adam's grip on Stella's waist tightened slightly, a silent show of support. He looked Lillian directly in the eye and said with unwavering confidence, Stella is a remarkable woman, and I'm incredibly lucky to have her and Hannah in my life. Circumstances don't define a person, Lillian. Strength, character, and kindness do. Lillian's smile faltered for a brief moment before she quickly recovered. Of course, Adam. I didn't mean to imply otherwise. It's just refreshing to see how open-minded you are. She turned her gaze back to Stella, her expression softening. I do admire your strength, Stella. It must have taken a great deal of courage to get where you are today. Stella felt Adam's support bolstering her confidence, and she smiled genuinely. Thank you, Mrs. Lillian. Life has its challenges, but I'm grateful for where I am now, and for the people who've been by my side. Lillian nodded approvingly, clearly noting Stella's poise. Well, I wish you both the best. I can see that you're very happy together, and that's what truly matters. As Lillian excused herself and moved on to greet others at the event, Stella let out a breath she hadn't realized she'd been holding. Adam turned to her, his expression full of pride. You handled that beautifully, he said softly, giving her hand a reassuring squeeze. Stella smiled, feeling a sense of accomplishment. Thank you, Adam. I was nervous, but I'm starting to realize that I don't need to let other people's judgments affect me. What matters is what we have, and the life we're building together. Adam nodded, his eyes full of warmth and admiration. Exactly. We're a team, Stella. And as long as we're standing together, nothing else matters. From that night on, Adam and Stella continued to face the world with confidence. Though there were whispers and occasional glances from others who didn't understand or approve of their relationship, they remained strong, their bond only deepening with time. Stella grew more comfortable in Adam's world, and with every event and every shared moment, they carved out a space where love, respect, and understanding flourished. And as they walked through life hand in hand, it became clear to both of them that this was just the beginning of a beautiful future together. As Lillian gracefully moved away, leaving Adam and Stella alone once more, they exchanged a glance that spoke volumes. While both of them had remained composed during the exchange, the invitation to Lillian's dinner party now hung over them like an impending test. Stella could still feel the weight of Lillian's gaze, the subtle yet undeniable scrutiny that had put her on edge. But she pushed those feelings aside, knowing that part of stepping into Adam's world meant navigating these moments with grace and resilience. Adam, sensing her unease, gently took her hand. "I know it might be uncomfortable, but I appreciate you being willing to go," he said softly, his voice full of gratitude. Stella squeezed his hand in return, offering him a reassuring smile. "I'm with you, Adam. We'll get through it together. Besides, maybe it won't be so bad. I'm sure it will be interesting, at the very least," she said, trying to remain positive despite the lingering tension in her chest. Adam nodded, appreciating her optimism. "You're right, and no matter what happens, we'll face it together." For the rest of the evening, they continued to enjoy the event, mingling with others and making the most of their time together. Stella found herself growing more confident in her interactions, bolstered by Adam's unwavering support. Even when she caught whispers or curious glances from others, she held her head high, determined not to let them affect her. But in the back of both their minds, the dinner at Lillian's loomed large. They both knew that it wasn't just an ordinary social gathering, it was an opportunity for Lillian and others in Adam's circle to assess their relationship more closely. And while Stella had faced plenty of challenges in her life, she couldn't help but feel a slight trepidation about what lay ahead. As the evening wound down and they prepared to leave, Adam walked Stella to the car, his hand resting protectively on her back. Once inside, he glanced over at her, his expression thoughtful. "I know tonight wasn't easy for you," he said quietly, "but you handled it with so much grace. I'm proud of you, Stella." Stella looked over at him, her heart swelling with affection. "Thank you, Adam. I couldn't have done it without you by my side. I just hope I can keep that same composure at Lillian's dinner." Adam smiled, his hand reaching out to gently take hers. "You will. And remember, we're in this together. No matter what happens, we'll get through it. You belong in my life, and I'm not going to let anyone make you feel otherwise." With those words, a sense of calm settled over Stella. She knew there would be challenges ahead, but with Adam's love and support, she felt ready to face them. As they drove home, the uncertainty of the future didn't seem so daunting anymore. Together they were stronger, and with each passing day, their bond only grew deeper. Whatever awaited them at Lillian's dinner, they would face it with the same resilience that had carried them this far. The room seemed to freeze in time as Lillian's revelation hung in the air, heavy with emotion and disbelief. Adam and Stella exchanged stunned glances, both of them struggling to process what they had just heard. Stella's heart pounded in her chest, her mind racing as she looked from Lillian to the old photograph, trying to comprehend the weight of it all. Lillian, her eyes now brimming with tears, nodded slowly. "Yes, Stella. You are my daughter," she said softly, her voice trembling. "I've carried this secret for so many years, and I knew that eventually I needed to tell you the truth. I didn't want to approach you before. I wasn't sure how, or if I even should. But seeing you with Adam, seeing how strong and independent you've become, I knew the time had come to tell you." Stella's hands shook as she reached for the photograph, studying the image of a younger Lillian, her face marked by both hope and sadness. The emotions coursing through her were overwhelming anger, confusion, disbelief, and a small, fragile hope that maybe this was the connection she had been searching for all her life. "Why didn't you?" she began, her voice faltering. "Why didn't you ever try to find me?" Lillian's tears fell freely now as she reached for Stella's hand. "I did try," she said, her voice thick with emotion. "But circumstances were so difficult. I was young and alone. I was forced to give you up for adoption. It wasn't my choice, Stella. It broke me, but I didn't have the strength to fight it at the time. By the time I was able to search for you, you were already gone. And I didn't know where to look. I've lived with that pain every day since." Stella's eyes filled with tears as she looked at the woman who, until this moment, had been nothing more than a mysterious figure in Adam's world. Now, she was so much more. All this time, Stella whispered, her voice trembling. "I thought I was abandoned, that no one wanted me." Lillian shook her head vehemently, her grip tightening on Stella's hand. "No, Stella. Never. I've thought about you every single day. Not a moment has gone by that I haven't wondered where you were, how you were living, if you were safe. I never stopped loving you, even though we were apart." Adam, who had been silent throughout the revelation, finally spoke, his voice gentle and filled with empathy. "This is a lot to take in for both of you," he said, looking at both women with concern. "Maybe we should take a moment to process this before we go any further." Stella, still in shock, nodded slowly, her mind reeling. She wasn't sure what to feel, whether to embrace this new reality or to protect herself from the pain that had been reopened. She looked at Adam, her anchor in this storm, and then back at Lillian, who was watching her with eyes filled with longing and regret. "I don't know what to say," Stella finally admitted, her voice small and fragile. "This is overwhelming. I never imagined." Lillian wiped her tears, her voice soft yet firm. "I understand, Stella. I didn't expect you to forgive me right away. I just wanted you to know the truth, to know that you were never abandoned out of lack of love. You've always been loved, even from afar." Stella swallowed hard, feeling the weight of Lillian's words. She had spent so many years wondering about her past, about who her parents were, and why they had given her up. Now, faced with the reality of it all, she wasn't sure how to proceed. But deep inside, there was a flicker of something. Maybe it was hope, or maybe it was the beginning of healing. Adam gently squeezed Stella's hand, offering her silent support. He knew this was a journey that would take time, but he was ready to walk it with her, no matter where it led. "Maybe we can start slowly," Stella said quietly, her voice filled with uncertainty, but also a hint of possibility. "I don't know how to process all of this right now, but maybe we can talk more, get to know each other." Lillian nodded, her tears still falling, but a small, hopeful smile began to form on her lips. "I would like that, Stella, more than anything." The rest of the evening passed in a blur of emotions, with Stella and Lillian beginning the tentative steps toward building a relationship neither had expected, but both seemed willing to explore. Adam remained by Stella's side, supporting her as she navigated the flood of emotions, knowing that this was just the beginning of a new chapter in her life, one that held the potential for both healing and newfound connection. The weight of Lillian's revelation hung in the air, thick and suffocating, as everyone at the table tried to process the gravity of her words. Adam's mind raced with disbelief and confusion. How could this be possible? Stella, who had never known her mother, was now being told that the woman sitting across from her was the mother she had been separated from for so many years. "This seems impossible," Lillian Adams said, his voice strained with skepticism. "Stella never knew her mother. How can you be sure that she is your daughter?" Stella, still in shock, glanced between Adam and Lillian, her heart pounding in her chest. The idea that this woman, this stranger, could be her mother was something she had never imagined. She felt as though the ground beneath her was shifting, leaving her unsteady and unsure of what to believe. Lillian, her eyes brimming with tears, took a deep breath before continuing her story. "When I was young, I met your father, Stella. He seemed like a good man at first, despite his issues with drinking. We were together, and I became pregnant with you. But after you were born, everything changed. He became aggressive, controlling. And on the day we left the hospital, he took you away from me. He disappeared, and I never saw either of you again." The room was silent as Lillian's words settled over them. Stella could feel the mix of emotions building inside her: anger at the years of abandonment, but also a strange, unexpected empathy for the woman who had been searching for her all this time. "I tried everything to find you," Lillian continued, her voice cracking with emotion. "I hired investigators, spent all the money I had, but it was as if you had vanished. There were no traces, no clues. I felt helpless, desperate. I never gave up searching, but the years passed, and I feared I would never find you." Stella absorbed every word, her mind swirling with conflicting emotions. "So, the man who raised me," she began slowly, her voice trembling. "He stole me from you. He wasn't really my father." Lillian nodded, tears now spilling down her cheeks. "Yes, Stella, he took you from me, and I've spent all these years trying to bring you back. You were the greatest treasure of my life, and losing you broke me in ways I can't even describe." Stella's heart ached with the weight of Lillian's story. She had always believed that her life, difficult as it had been, was the only one she had. Now, that foundation was crumbling as she tried to make sense of the truth. "How can you be so sure that I'm your daughter?" Stella asked, her voice quiet but firm. "Why only now? Why didn't you find me sooner?" Lillian wiped her tears and looked at Stella with a mixture of relief and sorrow. "When I saw you with Adam at the event, something inside me stirred a feeling, a connection that I couldn't explain. I couldn't ignore it. And then I noticed the mark on your hand, a birthmark exactly like mine. That was the last thing I remembered about you before you were taken from me." She paused, gathering herself before continuing. "After that night, I hired my investigator again, the one who has worked with me for years. I asked him to find out everything he could about you. And finally, after so many years, the pieces started to come together. He found your father, or the man who took you. Rather, he was living on the streets, drunk and broken, nothing like the man I once knew. The investigator managed to get him to talk, offering him drinks in exchange for information. That's when he confessed everything." Stella's breath caught in her throat as she listened. Lillian's words painted a picture of a man who had lived his life in fear, hiding from the truth and from the world. "He never sent me to school," Stella whispered, the realization hitting her. "We moved around so much. It makes sense now. He was trying to stay hidden, trying to erase any trace of me." Lillian nodded solemnly. "He was running from the truth, and in the process he kept you hidden from the life you should have had. But now that I've found you, Stella, I just want to get to know you, to try to make up for lost time, if you'll let me." Stella looked down at her hands, trying to steady her breathing as the weight of the revelation settled over her. She had spent her entire life not knowing where she came from, and now, in an instant, that mystery had been solved. But the answers brought with them a new set of challenges, questions about who she was, where she belonged, and how she would move forward from here. Adam, sensing Stella's turmoil, gently placed a hand on her shoulder. "Whatever you decide, I'm here for you, Stella," he said softly. "You don't have to go through this alone." Stella nodded, appreciating his support. She looked up at Lillian, her eyes still filled with uncertainty, but also with a flicker of hope. I don't know how to feel right now," she admitted. "This is so much to take in. But maybe we can start by getting to know each other." Lillian's eyes filled with tears once more, but this time they were tears of hope. That's all I've ever wanted, Stella, she said quietly. Just to know you, to be a part of your life, if you'll have me. The evening ended on a note of tentative possibility, with Stella, Adam, and Lillian all uncertain of what the future would hold but willing to take the first steps toward healing and connection. It was a new chapter, one that none of them had expected but that all of them were ready to explore, no matter where it led. Lillian smiled warmly, her eyes reflecting a mix of pride and affection. Then that's exactly what you should do, Stella. You have so much potential, and I want to help you pursue that dream. Architecture has been my life's work, and if it's something you're passionate about, I would love to guide you on that path. Stella looked down at her cup of tea, a flood of emotions washing over her. The past few weeks had been a whirlwind of revelations and changes, but this offer from Lillian felt like a step towards something she had always longed for, a future filled with possibilities, rather than the limitations she had lived with for so long. I don't even know where to begin, Stella admitted, her voice soft but filled with hope. I've always been fascinated by buildings, by the way structures come together, but I never thought I'd have the chance to study architecture. My life was. It just wasn't headed in that direction. Lillian reached across the table and placed her hand gently over Stella's. It's never too late to change direction, my dear. You have a natural curiosity and drive, and those are the most important qualities you need. I can help you find the right program and connect you with the right people. The rest is up to you. Stella's eyes filled with tears of gratitude. For so long, her life had been dictated by survival, by the need to get through each day, with little room for dreams or ambitions. But now, for the first time, she could see a future that wasn't just about surviving, but about thriving. I don't know how to thank you, she whispered, her voice trembling with emotion. You've given me so much already. Lillian's smile widened, her own eyes glistening with emotion. You don't need to thank me, Stella. This is your journey, and I'm just here to help you along the way. I spent so many years wondering if I would ever see you again, and now that you're here, all I want is to see you happy and fulfilled. You deserve that. The two women sat in comfortable silence for a moment, the bond between them growing stronger with each passing day. Stella could feel the warmth of a new beginning, a sense of belonging that she had never known before. It wasn't just about reconnecting with her biological mother, it was about finding herself in the process. As the days turned into weeks, Stella threw herself into her studies. With Lillian's guidance and support, she enrolled in an architecture program, and for the first time in her life, she felt like she was on a path that truly belonged to her. Adam stood by her side throughout it all, offering his love and encouragement as she took each step toward building the future she had always dreamed of. Life had taken unexpected turns for Stella, Adam, and Lillian, but together they were creating something new, something that bridged the gaps of the past and built a foundation for the future. And as Stella pursued her passion for architecture, she found that the structures she designed were not just physical buildings, but reflections of the strength, resilience, and love that had brought her to this point in her life. With each blueprint she drew and each lesson she learned, Stella was constructing more than just a career. She was building a life filled with purpose, connection, and the joy of finally living on her terms. Lillian smiled warmly. Well, I think it's time to make that dream come true. I want you to enroll in the best architecture school in the country. I will take care of everything. Stella was speechless for a moment, moved. Would you do that for me? I don't even know how to thank you, she said, tears of gratitude forming in her eyes. Lillian reached across the table and held Stella's hand. After everything we've lost, it's the least I can do. And there's more, Lillian continued. I'm building a room for Hannah here at the house. I will be there for every moment of her growth, something I unfortunately missed with you. Stella, now openly crying, felt a mix of happiness and relief. That means so much to me, Lillian. Hannah will love having a grandmother like you." In one of the many warm encounters between Stella and Lillian, the conversation took a deeply emotional turn. While Hannah played in the garden, Lillian confided in Stella, "My biggest dream after finding you would be to be called mother by you. But I understand that all this is very recent, and I respect your time. I will do whatever I can to deserve that title." Stella, touched by Lillian's words, responded sincerely, "You are already doing so much, Lillian. I appreciate every gesture. I'm sure we will become even closer." As time passed, their relationship naturally and organically strengthened. Stella made regular visits to Lillian's house, where Hannah loved spending time. The little girl, completely comfortable in Lillian's presence, filled the house with her laughter and joy, creating a family atmosphere that had long been absent in the lives of Lillian and Stella. Several years passed, and with Stella's architecture studies nearing completion, the big day of graduation finally arrived. Having faced many challenges and overcome numerous adversities, she was about to celebrate a significant milestone in her life. The graduation ceremony was packed with teachers, family members, and friends, all gathered to witness Stella's success. As she walked down the aisle toward the stage, Stella felt a mix of pride and gratitude. Her eyes scanned the audience, looking for three special people: her husband, who had always supported her unconditionally, her father-in-law, who had become a constant father figure in her life, and of course, Lillian, her biggest supporter in architecture. Stepping onto the stage, Stella looked out at the audience and began her speech. "Today I'm here not just because of my efforts, but also thanks to the invaluable support of some very special people," she said, her voice full of emotion. She continued, "My husband, who has always stood by my side, encouraging me to reach my goals. My father-in-law, who welcomed me as a daughter and gave me strength in difficult times." Then her eyes found Lillian, and she paused for a moment before saying, "And of course, my dear mother, Lillian. Mom, you gave me more than a chance to study. You gave me a home, love, and the family I always wished for." As the graduation ceremony came to a close, the moment between Stella and Lillian lingered like a powerful chord reverberating in the hearts of everyone present. Stella's heartfelt words calling Lillian mom, for the first time, had broken down the last remaining barriers between them, leaving nothing but love, gratitude, and an overwhelming sense of connection. The years of searching, the pain of separation, and the emptiness that once filled their lives had all led to this beautiful reunion, where hope had finally turned into reality. After the ceremony ended, the crowd dispersed, but Lillian couldn't let the moment pass without expressing the depth of her emotions. She gently pulled Stella aside, away from the cheerful bustle of graduates and their families. Her eyes shimmered with tears as she spoke, her voice soft but filled with the weight of years of longing. "My dear daughter," she began, her words choked with emotion. "For so many years there was an emptiness in my heart, a missing piece that I couldn't find. But deep down, I always believed that this day would come, the day when I could finally see the incredible woman you've become." Stella, still awash in the emotions of the day, held her mother's hands tightly, her own heart brimming with feelings she had never fully understood until now. As Lillian continued, the years of separation seemed to melt away, leaving only the present moment and the bond they were forging. "When you were taken from me," Lillian said, her voice trembling with emotion, "my world fell into silence. Every day, I fought to keep the hope alive, to believe that one day I would find you again. And now, standing here, seeing you so strong and radiant, I know that every tear, every prayer was worth it. You are my miracle. Stella." Stella's eyes filled with tears as she listened, her heart swelling with a mix of love, gratitude, and a deep sense of belonging. "Mom," she whispered, her voice thick with emotion, "I missed you every day, even without knowing who you were. There was always an emptiness, a space that nothing could fill, until today." Lillian nodded, her heart aching with both the sorrow of the years lost and the joy of the moment they now shared. "We may have missed so many moments, so many milestones," she said softly, "but from now on we will create new memories together. Life has given us a second chance, and I will be here for every step you take." The two embraced tightly, their arms wrapping around each other in a hug that healed the wounds of the past and solidified their relationship in the present. It was a moment of pure love, the kind of love that only a mother and daughter could share, a love that had overcome time, distance, and unimaginable hardship. "You've completed me in a way I never imagined possible," Lillian whispered, her voice barely audible but filled with deep emotion. Stella looked up at her mother, her eyes full of love and gratitude. "Mom, you've shown me the true meaning of family and love. I am so grateful for everything." Hand in hand, they left the graduation ceremony, both feeling renewed and filled with hope for the future. They knew that from this moment on, their lives would be immensely happier, shaped by the bond that had brought them back together. Their story was a testament to the power of maternal love, a love that never gives up, no matter what life throws in its way. And so, their journey continued, a journey of healing, of building new memories, and of embracing the love that had finally brought them together. As this heartfelt story comes to a close, take a moment to reflect on the lessons learned. What touched you the most? What will you take from this story and apply it to your own life? We'd love to hear your thoughts. Please share one thing you've learned in the comments below and how you plan to bring it into practice. If you liked this video, please leave your comment below, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our YouTube channel for more inspiring stories.